Thanks a lot for your patience and good day, everyone. I'm very excited to welcome you in our first webinar about software testing with Ilari Henrik Aegerter. Before we proceed any further, I would like to remind you that you will have the opportunity to address your questions to our speaker at the end of the webinar or while the webinar in the link attached to the event in Slido application. And I would like to also thank Ilari. Last year, he was the first speaker to accept my invitation to come to Armenia and have a public class for our engineers. And now Ilari is the first speaker who accepted my invitation to join our webinars. And I hope that our webinars will be very interesting and useful to those who are just starting their career in software testing and also professionals who work as a software testing engineer for a while. I would like to remind you that you can join Association for Software Testing Armenia. You can just write a message in Facebook or email, and I will tell you about the information how you can join our association. And now I'd like to pass mic to Ilari. Good evening, Ilari. Could you tell us about yourself, how you decided to become a software testing engineer and how you joined the Association for Software Testing? And also, can you share some insights about the Association for Software Testing and about your role in Association for Software Testing?
Sure, we can do that. So hello, Aram, and hello, everyone in Armenia. I've been to Armenia twice so far. There should have been the conference this spring, but there was, something happening that prevented conferences from happening. So I couldn't, unfortunately, travel to Yerevan at this time. Before I start with the introduction, I would like to remind you that there is a link in the chat window for the Slido app. This is the application that allows you to just type in questions. And then when you have the questions, you can kind of upvote the questions that you are also interested in. And then the most relevant ones will be on top. And when I start with the introduction, you can already start to ask some questions. So the format that I would like to hold this first webinar in is in terms of kind of an open space of having a discussion and questions on anything that you're interested in. So maybe as a short introduction, yes, as Aram already said, my name is Ilari Henrik Aegerter. I live in Switzerland, and I fell into testing in 2004, so it's already a while ago, and that was more or less a coincidence. I think that's quite the typical career path for testers, that you just kind of, you find yourself one day in software testing. You never planned that as your life goal. And then you started to like it. And so you continued doing whatever it is. So I've been in a variety of roles. I worked in the medical device space with hearing instruments. Then after that, I was running the testing department at eBay. And after that, I started House of Tests Switzerland, which is a test consultancy. So now it's kind of I have my own company, and we have testers that go into corporations and offer their engineering services. Then I have a long story with the Association for Software Testing as well. So I came into contact with them the first time in the year, I think 2009, where I actually planned to go to their conference in the US. But then for several reasons, it didn't actually work out. And so the first conference that I attended was in 2012, so a couple of years later, actually. This was a very life-changing event because I met a lot of people that became super important in, first of all, my career. And just I met a lot of good friends at the conference. And so many of the people that I've met in the course of especially the AST conferences and the BBST courses are still people that I'm in contact today, both professionally and in private. So all this led me to then also run for the board for the AST, where I joined the board in 2015. I'm currently in my last round of being on the board. So next year I'll drop out from the board. It has been a little bit longer than I initially planned. Also for that, there are several reasons why I stayed there more than 2 terms. So it's kind of, I've been there now then for 6 years, which is quite a long time. It was also quite funny that when Aram at a certain time, he just contacted us. I think that was actually that's only a year ago. It's not that long. With the proposal, how about we just build up some local chapters for the AST? And so that's why AST-Armenia is the first local chapter that we opened. It's also the one that's really having activities and doing some things, which is super fortunate. I think there's a lot of advantages that this can bring. And so I can really recommend you to become a member of the association, and you have access to the full set of offerings, especially the BBST courses, the black box software testing courses. I can highly recommend. They're super intensive. It takes 4 weeks of your time, but you really go very deep in testing. Yeah, so that's, I think, more or less the list of things that I should speak initially. I think let's just go over to questions. So just feel free to use Slido to ask anything you want to know.
Before our participants will start asking questions, I have prepared some questions that maybe will be some interesting for others too. So the first question is about software testing. So how you'll describe the software testing, how you'll describe this profession to the people who are very far from IT, and how do you describe software testing to the IT people?
Yes, so I think whenever you speak to people that are not in technical jobs or not in software engineering or any sort of that sort of job, then I usually try to explain it in terms of that software is something that's very difficult to build, and testing is trying to find out if it does any damage. And that's more or less how I just try to describe it. And so that it's just, it's kind of a preventative, supportive organization that will help to see whether or not there are some negative side effects of that. Then when I speak to software developers, in my experience, software developers often have the confirmatory part of testing quite in the foreground. And that comes quite naturally because anything that's based on algorithms and test automation is basically an evaluation that evaluates for true or false, which means that you always have to codify your explicit expectations. So that leads to software engineers often disregarding the exploration part or the experiments part, where you try to find out how does the software behave in some weird situations without even having an expectation about that, but seeing whether or not there's anything wrong that's happening. And so I think the second part, the conducting experiment part, is less dominant with software engineers. It's more the evaluation for true or false.
Okay, great. So speaking about software testing, we need to come to software testing engineers. And who are software testing engineers?
We have a look at that.
And what does he or she do? And what's the role of software testing engineer? How to become a software testing engineer?
Well, I think there are several paths to be coming into testing, and also the profession shows that many people have a wide variety of backgrounds when they came into testing. It's kind of my personal view is that it is very helpful if someone has some sort of foundation in an engineering profession. So if you're a software engineer, I think that's a very good point to start with. I also want to make sure that that's not the final truth. It's kind of that's probably my temporary view on things, that it is probably a good idea to also be an engineer. Maybe in 10 years, I even have a different opinion. However, when you're in testing, it is the mixture, or it's a combination between the engineering part of things and more the philosophy and the art part. And I think that's what makes testing so interesting. It's not a pure engineering discipline. And the reason for that is that software is a system that includes the humans. So software is always built for human purposes. So it is for us. And we humans are psychological beings and very messy. And it's kind of, we're not we don't function in an algorithmic way. So that makes it interesting. But I mean, just in the path of going into testing, you should have a wide variety of interests, both in engineering practices as well as in psychology, philosophy, and the arts.
Speaking about psychology, can you go a little bit deeper? Because I know that so you are having some talks about this, and also so you read books and giving some talks about this. So can you share your ideas about this a little bit more?
So maybe if we just take one part where psychology plays a very important role, I would think that in interaction with teams, it is important how you interact with the people in your teams in order to get the right sort of information. That's where probably psychology plays most into, because as a software test engineer, you are usually involved in telling someone that what they built is not really good. And this is not, that's a difficult, it's a difficult message to convey, that something is not good. And if you find ways to inject humor in that, or also soften the blow, it's kind of, you're basically not telling that someone did a bad job. You're just saying that there is something not okay. And I think it is important to know something about human communication in order to understand how to convey that message. Then in software, sometimes you observe elements in software that are not really nice, and you would have to explain that, okay, humans will misunderstand that. So this is, so our group of customers, they are non-technical people, or they're not in the domain of such and such, and they will most likely interpret some structure in the software differently. So that's where probably psychology also comes into it.
Okay, thanks a lot. And Ilari, what are your thoughts about testing profession and why it's needed nowadays?
Can you say it again?
And because why it's needed nowadays, and what are your thoughts about the testing profession? Because nowadays there are robots, there is machine learning and artificial intelligence, and there is also our automation checking, and many people are predicting that software testing will not be necessary very soon. So what are your thoughts about this topic?
My thoughts about this is that these people don't know what they talk about. But again, it's kind of, I can understand it. It's there's a lot of hope into artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, there are these two words. There's one, intelligence, and then there's learning. Now, these are both properties that are deeply rooted in human activities. It's the same thing when, for instance, if you make a calculation 2 plus 2, or if you just make an addition in your head, you don't do it the same way as a computer does. You're not exchanging bits. It's kind of, you don't switch over to a binary system and do that. So basically the activity of a computer compared to one of a human, they are fundamentally different. It's kind of our brain is not a computer. And so whenever you take analogies from the human sphere, like intelligence or learning, and transpose them into machines, you can be sure that what you get is not exactly the same as what humans do. So that's not what's going to happen. Now, it's in testing, what makes it necessary to always test is, first of all, the fact that software is built by humans, and humans are not perfect machines. They are making mistakes, and they make it for the gains of being able to act very fast. So we humans can make decisions super fast, and we can take action super fast, but it comes at the cost of not being 100% correct. But we can still, we can live our life and take decisions very, very fast, but some of those decisions will be wrong. And that's the same thing when we build software. We will just be, we misunderstand something, and then we just implement it in a way we think it is. So that's one of the aspects. But the second aspect is also that the possible number of behaviors software can demonstrate is infinite. So it's infinitely big. Within this infinite space, it is always possible that some of those behaviors are not desirable. And the only way to discover those before knowing what they are is through a very good experimental design. Now, machines currently tend to be very bad at doing that. So now, if you get the impression that it's kind of, oh, he's not so much in favor of automation and software engineering, that's not true. What I try to distribute is the workload in a way that you give the machines what machines are good for, and you give humans what humans are good for. So machines are very exact. They never get bored. They don't have a bad temper. They don't get angry, and they can do the same task over and over again without, losing any of the accuracy and precision. Whereas humans, they are all shit at all this. But what they're really good at is in pattern matching mechanisms, in trying to find fuzzy areas where they can just get some trigger to explore even further. So that's where humans are really good and machines really suck at. And so I believe if you combine those two areas in a smart way, then you have the golden ticket. But that the humans will go away in testing, I think that's just utter nonsense. This goes in the same category of the people in the 60s who said that in the year 2000, everyone will be traveling with flying cars. It's kind of, they just fell in love with the possibilities of technology. But yeah, you see that I think this is a bit far-fetched that there will be some artificial intelligence doing the testing anytime soon. I might be wrong. Maybe it goes faster than I think.
Okay. So thanks a lot. And meanwhile, there is a question in Facebook Live that is a little bit connected to this topic. So Hovhannisyan is writing, I noticed that many of the interviews are mainly based on API testing questions, and they require quite good knowledge and experience on it. Could you please tell me why API testing becomes so essential and trendy in software testing, and predictions do you have about future trends in QA? Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the last one first. So future trends in testing, I have no idea. And anyone who comes to you and tells this is how testing looks like in 5 years, they also don't know what they talk about. It's kind of what they basically take is the current states, then they pick the parts they like, and then they amplify the parts they like. And that's what they think is testing in 5 or 10 years. But then it just develops in a completely different direction, and actually no one knows. Also, I don't think it's super helpful to ask the question, okay, how does it look in 5 years? Unless you want to know what you should be focusing on. And then it is a good idea to ask yourself, okay, what are the constant areas that will not go away in testing? I'll come back to that, but I want to first address the API testing part. My interpretation for that is that many systems, they are just interconnected. And therefore, the API aspect of software testing has naturally become a very dominant and important aspect of testing. But I don't think that you should, so I would not focus myself in an interview just on that aspect, unless it is really someone who needs to specialize in that area. But it's kind of my explanation of that is, it is just important because systems are interconnected and they interconnect through APIs, and therefore that sort of testing becomes very important. If the interview is only on API testing, that I would find that quite weird and isolating. That's very strange. But again, it's kind of if you want to focus on being hireable in the future in testing as well, I would focus a lot on the general principles of software testing and kind of go a step back and ask yourself, why do we actually do that, and create a deep understanding of that. It is certainly not, the knowledge of a specific tool is less important than knowing the mechanisms that allows you to pick a good tool. So I'll repeat that. So it is not important if you know a specific tool, but it's more important to know how would you come to the conclusion to pick that specific tool.
Okay, thanks a lot for your answer, and I hope that Ami will give feedback about it. Yeah, and one more question, Ilari, being managing director of House of Tests, and you are certainly the right person that can give good advice and tell us what can be possible, be a great career path for software testing engineers. Maybe you can give some advice here.
Well, maybe I can tell what I look for when I'm hiring people. So it's kind of in my specific context. And again, I'm not saying this is universal. It's kind of in my specific context. My company has clients who are looking for deeply technical testers. So the aspect of our test engineers being software engineers is a very important one. So for me, it's kind of, I look for a foundation in software engineering. I want to have people who can demonstrate that they understand the fundamentals of software engineering. So this can be either a computer science degree, software engineering degree, but it's more to me, the paper itself is not that important to me. It's more the demonstration that they can do deeply technical work. So that's one of the aspects. Then the second aspect is that I'm looking for people who have taken a decision that is my career path is going to be in software test engineering. So testing is my path. This is where I want to stay. It's not just an intermediary job before becoming a front or a backend developer. So I'm not looking for junior people who later on want to become software engineers. I'm not saying this is wrong. That path is not wrong. They would not be right for myself. And then the third element, which is also super important, I want to have people who have a history of lifelong learning. So these people need to be just generally curious and interested. I'm less interested in someone who has made a university degree 10 years ago and has not been at a single meetup, not participated at any webinars, has not done any Coursera courses, has not watched a ton of tutorials on YouTube or something like that, who can just name 3 books they have just read recently about something that's relevant to testing. So these are just elements that I think are super important. These 3, like engineering foundation, want to be in testing, and are curious people that cherish learning for the sake of learning, not because it's mandated by the manager.
Thanks a lot. Usually when I'm starting asking questions like what are the last 3 books about software testing that you read, my colleagues are asking, come on, nowadays it's very hard to read these books, but I think that is the right question to ask. And speaking about the books, I know that in your blog you often post about books that you recommend people, and there are tons of books. And maybe you can share and speak about 3 books that made a huge impact on you and you want to recommend us to read them.
Okay, so let me start with just a general answer that is not specific a book, but it's just there is Jerry Weinberg. So this is maybe something you just need to write down, and it's quite easy with him because all his books are just very recommended. He's a very deep thinker. So Gerald, I write it into the chat window of Zoom. So Gerald M. Weinberg, anything?
And I'll post it in Facebook too.
But it is the basically there is this is that's a 4-book series on quality software management. It's been written in the early 90s and it still reads very, very contemporary. That's really a good one. Then also one that's actually quite old. I find it. It's very old, but still very nice is this one. So Lessons Learned in Software Testing. So
it should be something like a handbook for everyone.
Yeah. So okay, I write it here. Lessons learned. So the reason this one is very nice, it's also super old, it's from the early 2000s. So this is not a new book, but it contains like little chapters of nuggets on learning. So you don't have to read it from front to back, but you can just take your time and go through chapters that you're interested in specifically. That's a very nice one. Then what's also interesting is quite with my third. Let me think. I can't find it, but it's let me see. So it's from Harry Collins, and it's I recommend that one. Okay, so maybe let's ask the book 3A. Any sort of historical book. So it's the art of software testing. So this one here by Glenford Myers. This is from 1979. So these are just the first time that people really started to think deeply about software testing. And it sometimes makes sense to go there just to see that we make the same mistakes over and over again. And yeah, I think we should go with Harry Collins's Tacit and Explicit Knowledge. So yeah.
Yeah, that one is awesome.
Explicit. And so the reason there is, it gives you a deep understanding of why the combination of automated approaches in testing and more exploratory experiment parts are necessary. By giving a deep explanation on how you can know something, but you can recognize if it's wrong when it appears. So that is, it's a thought that is often missing in people who are deep into engineering. However, it's the way that Harry Collins writes about this is very helpful. So I would say, yeah, these three.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for your recommendations. And we have a question in Zoom group chat. Let's read it. Hello, do you think that technical education in computer science is necessary to become a good software tester?
No, it's not necessarily necessary. I know a couple of people who do not have a technical background, but those people have worked themselves into developing a high enough level to at least understand how to write code and have a meaningful discussion with a software engineer. And so this is basically the ability to have a professional discussion with someone whose profession you're not an expert in. I would expect that any software tester who is in practicing software testing should at least be able to read code and understand what's happening there. But you don't have to necessarily be a software engineer. Very often, the ability to be a very good person to conduct experiments and to create some good exploratory testing is exactly the part that's missing in teams. And so it's not necessary. I don't think it's absolutely crucial, or you cannot say that if you're not a software engineer, you will never be a good tester. I think that's completely wrong.
Yeah, thank you. So speaking about testing, we usually are reading manual testing and automation testing titles for hiring people and in some articles, yeah, and etc. So what are your thoughts about manual testing and automation testing? Because I know what are your thoughts, and many people who knows you, they watched your conference talks, but one more time, can you tell us what are your thoughts about manual and automation testing and why it's right or why it's wrong?
Mm-hmm. So I think this, again, it's deeply rooted in our human need to always have a kind of a binary system of categorizations. We like to put things in either the A drawer or the B drawer. It's always the big and small and far and near. And we often have these binary thinking categories. And unfortunately, that also happened in testing, where there's only the distinction between manual and automation tester or automated tester. The reason for that also lies in that at a certain time, there was a big inflow of testers into the profession of testing who were basically just automatons executing test cases. So basically, they just did follow some instructions, so-called test cases, where there was step 1, step 2, step 3. And that's a very bad system to examine software anyway. But then that led that, okay, these are just the manual testers. And then we have the automation testers. These are the ones that have a technical background. They can do some test automation. That also often led to these being two separate teams that actually didn't interact with each other. I've seen that in companies as well, where they don't even know each other, but they have there's just two different approaches to examining software through automation and through exploration. So, and that's not something that should be split into teams. So to me, just the whole split between manual and automated testing doesn't make sense in the same way, like you don't say that someone is a manual parent or an automated parent. So it's kind of manual, well, it's kind of you're carrying your baby, so you must be a manual parent. That doesn't make sense, right? And your automated parent, it's called television. So, but that doesn't make sense to talk about automation in that sense. Or it's kind of what else? It's kind of, so if you ask a manager, so, oh, interesting, so you're a manager. Mm-hmm. So are you a manual manager or are you an automated manager? So why don't you automate your job? That would be much better. I mean, come on, manager, why do you still manually? Why do you talk to people? That's a manual. It doesn't make sense. Or for software engineers, a manual software engineer is someone who types their code through the keyboard into the computer. Why don't they automate their coding? It's kind of why still do it manually? That's not engineering. So or a scrum master. So why do you still talk to people? So you still walk to the stand-up meeting? Stand-up is so manual. Yeah, to me, it doesn't make sense. And for me, it would be a good world to not have the distinction between manual and automated, but more the distinction between conducting experiments with the software and algorithmically trying to verify or refute certain explicit expectations. So that would be more, but you see, you need more words for that. And as soon as you need more words for that, it becomes complicated and people don't want to do that. But to me, there is no such thing as a manual tester. It's to me, there are testers and some make use of automation.
Okay, thanks a lot for your answer. Yeah, and we have another question. So I have a question about automation testing. And with what programming language you will advise to start? What kind of books you can mention as advice?
So it's maybe the advice I want to give there is not a specific language that you should automate in, but I would like to advise the Automation University, which is a good place to start. So the Automation University is one where there's a lot of elements of courses to understand the principles of automation. I would not ask yourself first the question of what sort of programming language you should start with. I would not recommend to start with books, but the Automation University, let me see if I have the link here. Yes, it's here. So I would go there, testautomationapplytools.com, and just browse through. So Angie Jones, who has set up that whole thing, she is an incredibly, so if you click on the link, yeah, she's right there. She's on the first icon is Angie Jones. And she's just a very energetic person who, whenever she takes something in her hand and does it, it's going to be awesome. So I think this is a good place to start. And then in terms of the language, this is if you're in you work in a company that uses a specific language, I would focus on that one because that will give you the applicability fastest. So I cannot give you a more general answer than that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And we have questions in Slido, and we can start with these questions. So the first question is, how do you assess successfulness of QA team and entire software engineering team?
Well, when they don't kill themselves and each other, then that's a good start. No, but a little bit more serious within the teams. I think if people are going for drinks after work, that is a good sign that it is a functional team. But of course, the successfulness is if they are able to ship successful software that doesn't kill anyone on the market. I think that's what makes it interesting. It's like the
our
QA
team is clapping now.
Yeah, or the QA team. I think the successfulness is if the interaction lines between different functions in those teams are intact and people are communicating heavily. So if there is a low border of being able to communicate with each other, I think that is already the most important success factor. If you find something, well, I can't talk to developer A because I don't think he likes us testers, that's a bad sign. But I think it's really the openness of communication within the team is a good secondary indicator whether or not those people are successful in doing what they're doing. But then, of course, you would also have to look at the company. Are they successful in making money? Are they sustainable with their model? And then it becomes, so I think there are some business aspects as well that play into it.
Cool. So another question. So here it's written, what KPIs do you use for manual and automation QAs? But I'll rephrase it. What do you think, do we need some KPIs in software testing, and what metrics we need to use in software testing, or we just don't need to use anything like that?
So, I mean, key performance indicators is rooted in the need of humans to get a complexity reduced model of reality in order to make decisions. So the whole reality out there. So you have teams that they do their work, and because it's impossible to evaluate people's work as a full reality, you need to build some sort of model underneath. And key performance indicators are was one attempt to building something like that. So KPIs, they are deeply rooted in business schools of people that are very far removed from well, certainly from sociology and understanding of how groups work together. It is also singling out just specific aspects of that where smart people can optimize against. So if you put in a couple of KPIs, smart people will be able to trick them. Whenever you set up some very simple goals that you have to chase after, people will game the system. I very much believe in building a culture that is, first of all, high performance learning culture where people can just flourish, and then people will be attracted to that and the organization will succeed. I don't believe in making any sort of goal setting at the beginning of the year and then giving some school grades at the end of the year. I think that's a bad system of interacting with adults. So we're not in school. We don't have to give grades. Very unfortunately, many people in the world still think that you have to do management by objectives. You set some KPIs in place, and then you set up SMART goals for your people. Mostly those are 5 to 7 SMART goals. Then those are rated on a spectrum of 1 to 5. And then based on that, you get some, you can keep your job or you can't keep that. And at the end of the year, you sit together and then you tell as a manager every single person that, yes, you did good here and here's not so good. And this is a 5 and that's a 4. I think that's a very depressing system, and we should get rid of that. It has never worked, and also it will not work. It is so. If you're interested in where this is rooted in, it is rooted in Peter Drucker's book called Management, and so it has a chapter in it, and you see it's a super thick book, and it has a chapter in it. It's called Management by Objectives. And it gives the description of how to set up some SMART goals that people then will fulfill, and how you can evaluate those SMART goals. A very deep description of how to implement such a system. However, it is followed by a subchapter called Applicability to Knowledge Workers. So that's where we are. We work with our brain. And it's a much shorter subchapter, but it basically just tells that well, don't do it. Don't use this system with knowledge workers, because it will fail. And it's kind of the I'm very much a cynic in this world. That's what keeps me alive. And to me, this is completely clear. It's kind of people don't read books. These business school types, they will get some, abstracts, just some shortened versions of the original literature. They will never go and buy a book that has been published in the 60s and read through 1,000 pages. They don't do that. I do that. That's why I have an informational advantage to those people. And so these idiots have not read the important part of that. This is like, yeah, it's just basically the book, the primary. So the funny thing is they're referring to a book that basically says the opposite of what they want to tell you. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. It's a very long time ago. I had a deep fight with a person from HR in a, yeah, I won't say what company it was. That was a very deep fight, and it almost ended in a fist fight because it was so bloody stupid. And it's kind of I also basically told him that he should probably get a book once in a while and read that. But HR people don't do that. Yeah, we could go into my opinions on HR. HR is evil. It's HR is, yeah. I don't like HRs.
So it's a very good topic to discuss, and if you have, yeah, so we have a little bit time, and yeah, let's talk about HRs and hiring testers. So it's very interesting when we are requesting our HRs to start hiring testing engineers. So what are your thoughts about this? So what's your advice to HR managers? And
so I think that I have to take a little bit back my bashing from HRs before in the sense of the HR people often having specialized knowledge in, for instance, having a look at CVs and finding, the gaps or something that's fishy or weird. So I think HR people are pretty good in trying to find out if someone has cheated somewhere. I think they have good methods in doing that, so they can be super helpful in that. However, I don't think HR people should evaluate any sort of CV in terms of whether or not those are handed over to the teams who select people for interviews. So what HR departments often do is kind of they scan for the AST-QB certification, which is, in my experience of having interviewed probably around 250 people in my professional life, has never been an indicator of whether or not someone is a good tester or not. Never. There's no correlation whatsoever. On the contrary, it's very often people with a certification have become complacent and think, oh, okay, now I'm a professional tester and I don't have to do anything. So my advice there is always take people into the interview who know their job and know what they're looking for, and focus on people being able to demonstrate their ability, not to show some paper. So also in my general view, I'm not so much interested in if someone has a piece of paper. I want to know if that person wants to do their job. If they don't have a university degree and nothing at all, but they can demonstrate that they can do deeply technical work in a complicated, complex environment, I don't see a reason not to hire them. Why should I not hire them? This is no reason. So my general advice to HR people is find out how to evaluate skill and stop focusing on those bloody papers and certifications. So, I mean, there is, I don't know, have you heard of the IQSTD certification? So it's kind of because of the whole certification scheme in 2013, a good friend and I came up with a different certification scheme. You can have a look at this link. It's and you can self-certify yourself. There's also a Twitter handle. Can I do that, Aram? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Here you can do anything.
This one here. So this is more of the thing that it's going to be. So in general, I get angry about a lot of things, but if I only get angry all the time, it would just poison me and I would be dead very fast. So sometimes I have to make fun of things, and so this. So in 2013, we built a different certification scheme as an alternative to what is out there.
Okay, so thank you. So many people will start opening these links very soon. So let's go back to our questions in Slido. So here we have another questions. So there is a question from Anonymous. So from my understanding, not many QA teams are conducting root cause analysis. How to start and enhance the skill step by step? Thank you.
Yes, so root cause analysis is rooted in systems thinking. So root cause analysis has the premises that we have an ordered system that behaves in a foreseeable way, which means that if you look at an outcome, then you can just go back step by step until you're at the root of the problem. Now, unfortunately, software does not fall into that. So I'm not so sure if root cause analysis is the right instrument to understanding why something was caused. If root cause analysis is thought of as, okay, so something we messed up and trying to reflect and trying to come to the origins of why something went bad, and if it's practiced as a reflection activity, then I'm all for it. But it's so root cause analysis has a very mechanistic connotation, being rooted in mechanistic linear systems, and that's not what software is. So very often it's super difficult to come to the root of a problem just by going step by step back. But it's so this anonymous questioner, I think it is a good idea if you emphasize the necessity to reflect on your actions and really having retrospectives on what is going to happen and trying to find out, okay, so here we did a good job. Do we know why we did a good job? What could be replicating factors that will enhance the chance that we'll do a good job again? Or, okay, here we messed up. Okay, is there any sort of general pattern that made us act in a very bad way? And then try to make that in a very formal way after each iteration or something. So I think this is a very good thing, but it's again, you can't force any team to do anything. So it is, I think you just need to use your personal convincing skills.
Cool, thanks. And we have last question that has more votes. So we all know about pair programming. What is a pair testing in software testing?
Same thing. Well, no, it's not the same thing. So the advantage of working in pairs is that you can watch someone thinking while you do work and vice versa. And by doing so, the sum of the two people become more than two people. So if there's pair programming, the general code quality just automatically gets better because you're constantly reflecting your own work, and you have, while someone works, someone else is an observer, and there is a constant interaction between that. Now the same effect goes with pair testing. So if you test in pairs and you want to come up with test ideas, if person A comes with an idea, then and states that idea aloud and tells, okay, we could do this, then just by the other person listening to that idea could be triggered to come up with something else, whereby the person B would not have come up with that idea had he or she not heard what person A said before. So it's a positive feedback loop that's in place, where there is checking on each other and the sum of the two people just becoming more than that. So I think, yeah, pair testing, I can highly recommend that.
Okay, great. And another question that I missed, what kind of test artifacts do you use to test a product?
So can you clarify what you mean with that? What sort of test artifacts to test? So artifacts to me, these are more like, you know, what you write down, and then it's kind of it's like the documentation that you create for like a test report or a bug report or something like that. Not sure if I understand what is meant. So maybe AG, you can clarify. Just write you clarifying. thing in the in Slido.
And when we'll have update on this, let's go to the last question. I think that you already answered it. To become a QA, it's important to have engineering background. Does it reflect on company not to hire someone without engineering background or not? So you already answered that. No one needs to have an engineering background or some degree to become a software testing engineer or software tester, or as it's written in the question, QA engineer.
So maybe also to expand a little bit more on that, it's I've seen companies where who operate in extremely complicated domains. So let's say if you have a company that has built some very specific technological areas where you need to have a lot of domain knowledge. So there are companies that, for instance, make some plain lasers that are used in building construction. It's kind of in that area, you need to know a lot about the domain you're in. And so quite naturally, what happens in these domains is that many of the testers are not from the technical software engineering background, but they're from the domain specific background. So they know a lot about the domain. And I think that is super important. I would think that as a non-technical tester, it becomes more difficult to get a job in more generic areas. So some sort of web application, some sort of banking application, unless it goes really deep into, I don't know, trading algorithms or something. So areas that have a low level of domain knowledge necessity probably becomes more difficult to find a job as someone who really has no background. But where the domain knowledge is very important, I think you can still do that.
Okay, great. So Artak wrote that, yes, documentation, work products, reports, if any. So this question, this is different to the what kind of test artifacts do you use to test a product?
Yep. Well, it's as little as possible and as much as necessary. So I think anything that you write down or that you operate as a report is additional time that is taken away from you interacting with the product. So it's kind of whenever you write a report, it is time you could be using testing. However, reports can be very important just to keep people informed. But it's if you have to make a decision whether or not make it long or short, keep it on the short side. I think any good test strategy is possible to write down on one page. It's very often what you should not do is kind of download some of those available templates on the internet that are already 50 pages long. No one will ever read those. It's not possible. So keep it short. Whenever you can substitute text with graphs, use graphs. Its visualizations are often they're a better method to convey any sort of knowledge than block text. So if you have a block of text, this is very difficult for humans to parse. If you have a diagram, it is much easier and faster.
Thank you. And another question from Mary. Is there any mechanism of items testing estimation?
Say it again?
Is there any mechanism of items testing estimation?
Items testing estimation. So do you mean how much time is needed for some specific feature to test? Is that Mary? Can you? So some feature? Yeah. No, because it is the duration you need to test something is very much a function of many things. One of which is the general quality of what you're going to test. Much of that general quality is only revealed when you test. So it's kind of, you can't tell it beforehand. So it is not possible to tell exactly how much you need that. However, it is certainly possible if you have a lot of experience in similar projects, then you can make comparison with something in the past and give a range. So what I would do if you're, and I'm not sure if this question also contains the ask from a manager to have very detailed estimation on that. But if that's the case, try to operate with ranges. It's kind of try to make a best guess, then subtract 20% of that and double your initial estimation, and then give the range that you have there. So it's kind of in an absolute best case, it might be something around this, and in the worst case, it's kind of double your gut feeling. And again, it's kind of maybe it's 3 times that you need to do that. But if you give a range, by giving a range, you already you signal that it is not an exact science where it can give a exact number on what you estimate on. That's why they're called estimations. They're not called calculations.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for answering all the questions that were in our Zoom chat and in Slido. It seems that we have answered all the questions, and maybe we have missed something.
I just placed a little bit of advertisement. So this is just my YouTube channel with short videos. They're usually between 1 and 2 minutes, just on some aspect of software testing. So if you're interested, it's completely free. Have a look at it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I've added this to Facebook Live comments too. And also you can post your blog link.
Well, yes, absolutely. And it's also, so if anyone wants to contact me, it's I like chats about testing in general. So feel free to just ping me on the usual channels. I can be found on LinkedIn, yeah, on YouTube. So it's gonna be, if you want to chat about testing anytime, I'm happy to have a discussion on anything.
Thanks a lot. I think that you'll get many requests tonight. Yeah, if there are no questions, so let's say thank you, Ilari, for wonderful webinar, and we hope that there is another question. Just a second. I don't find where I saw this question. What is the most you like about software testing process?
I think what I like most about it is that it is an activity that encapsulates most of human activities, and it is one of the rare areas where there is a deep combination between the strict sciences, mathematics, engineering, and anthropology, sociology, arts, and psychology. I think this is what makes it extremely interesting, is that it's kind of, you have this, again, it's kind of so-called hard and soft science. And that's, to me, I think it's on the science side, the same as manual and automated. I think the soft sciences are much harder to understand. So, but what I believe is the most interesting thing is that that it combines those two activities in a very interesting way.
Thank you. So that was the last question. Yeah, and thanks a lot. Thank you very much for attending our webinar. Ilari, thank you very much for accepting my invitation and this awesome webinar. And we hope to see you again in Yerevan, and not only in Yerevan, but also in our online webinars.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
I'm very much looking forward to coming to Armenia once this thing is over.
Yeah, we hope that this will end up very soon, and we can do our Yerevan Testing Days conference that we canceled this year, and not only in the conference, but maybe you'll come to do some public classes and etc.
All right. So have a good day, and thanks for joining us, and see you soon.
Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.